I would like now to introduce today's presenter. David Ricard, Vice President, leads Everest Group's sourcing and vendor management and customer experience management services offerings for EMEA clients, as well as select global accounts. Shendak Biswas is a practice director on the business process services team. He assists clients on topics related to customer experience management, including customer experience strategy, service delivery models, market opportunity assessment, and more. And with that, I would like to turn things over to David.
Thank you very much and welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us for this webinar. What we wanted to cover today, actually, we want to build upon some of our experiences and what we're seeing in the market. Is really three main areas. So one is around looking at CXM services market and what we're seeing in terms of the outlook and the key trends that we're seeing. We then want to get into a bit more detail and talk about some of the challenges that we know leaders of CX functions across the globe are faced with, and make some recommendations in terms of things that we feel that people should be focusing on in terms of trying to overcome some of these challenges. And then we know that outsourcing is a large part of the CX ecosystem. So we also then want to cover some of the role of service providers in helping organizations to maximize their CX capabilities as we move forward. So hopefully there'll be some useful content that we can cover today. Just a very quick introduction from Chandak and myself. So as Chandak said, he works with our CX practice and he's one of our practice directors leading a lot of the research that we do. And from my perspective, I've been with Everest Group a couple of years now and I lead our CXM practice area. But prior to that, I'd also been in consulting for a number of years. And then also I was a senior procurement director at Microsoft for nearly 18 years, responsible for contact center outsourcing. So hopefully between Chandak and myself, we can bring an element of the analyst work that we do, but also I can bring some consulting and some real world experience as well from my time as a buyer. So hopefully you'll get some real value from the session today. So first thing we're going to look at on the next couple of slides is just what's happening in the market. And Chandak, maybe you can give us an overview in terms of what's happening in the CXM market, how it's rebounded post-COVID, just to give set the context for the audience.
Sure. Thanks, David. I think the CXM industry currently is in a good shape. So as you can see in this slide, we have tracked the growth trajectory of top 25 BPS providers and how their performance has been throughout the COVID period and has compared it pre-COVID as well as post-COVID. So if we see that CXM is one of the largest market when we compare it with other industry specific like healthcare, banking, financial services, insurance, finance and accounting, or some of the new gen services like marketing or content moderation. So CXM is the largest of them all. But still, it has witnessed one of the steepest rise after COVID, and the industry has been very good in recovering the work that was lost and the COVID-induced adversities which happened in 2020. So if we look at the red dotted box where we have focused the rebound period of this industry, we can see that the industry started recovering quickly in the second quarter of 2020, and it continued till mid 2021. And this is when the economy started opening up. Businesses were looking at new normal and strategizing about how they should look forward to the upcoming years. The market is stabilizing right now. I think it is moving towards a pre-COVID level, where the COVID-induced contracts or COVID-related work contracts are coming to an end, particularly in the government sector. While more sustainable and long-term businesses are trying to outsource their CXM services and plan for the new normal. If we see the overall CXM market in the other slide, it is heavily dominated by the in-house contact centers. So currently, almost 70% of the market is run by the in-house contact centers, whereas close to 30% of the market is outsourced. 2020 was one year when the market shrank a bit, and particularly the in-house contact centers were at the receiving end of it. but the market rebounded quickly in both sense. The growth rate of in-house contact centers has been 1 to 2%, while the outsourced contact centers has grown by more than 10% in last year. So this is a very positive outlook for the outsourcing industry. Multiple factors come into play in this growth market. So David,
Yeah.
what do you think are the factors which are shaping up the outsourcing industry?
Yeah, thanks, Chandra. Because I think it is interesting because what we've seen is that the outsourced portion is continuing to outpace the growth of the in-house market, and I think there's a number of key factors there. So the first one is outsourcing has always been a lever for cost savings, but actually one of the things I think is probably even more prevalent right now is the focus on business continuity planning. So having been in the industry for a long time, business continuity planning was always important, but actually it was often sort of secondary or third to or tertiary to some of the planning. And what we're hearing now is actually business continuity planning, putting that at the forefront of your strategy is key. So if we did get into another COVID situation or any form of lockdown, how does your business continuity plan stack up? And we know that a lot of in-house CX leaders are looking at their BCP and thinking, well, actually leveraging an outsourcer who may have a much broader footprint, is a lot more agile in terms of being able to spin up new centers because they've got multiple locations across the globe. That's actually a sensible move. So definitely cost savings that can come with outsourcing if done correctly, but then also the BCP is one area. The second area is around the adoption of digital CXM solutions. And the reason for that, I think, is because we know that there's a big push and a lot of focus from organizations on improving their customer experience. And we know that actually customers are expecting much more interaction from a digital channel perspective. So actually to be able to adopt digital solutions really quickly, you often need the talent, which we know is a shortage of globally, but also the investment in the technology and the skills. And so we know that enterprise buyers are looking at service providers to be able to provide them with those skills and the technologies to be able to rapidly get to that sort of solution. And actually we know that time to value is key for enterprises. So being able to shorten that time to value by working with a provider who has those skills is going to be crucial. And then last is around the talent shortage and increasing costs, again, which we touched on around the adoption of digital CXM solutions. But we know there's a talent shortage out there, both for digital talent, but also contact center talent. And what we're seeing is that actually CX leaders are thinking, well, actually service providers are a well-oiled machine in terms of hiring talent, trying to retain talent, having them working in a hybrid model. And actually it enables them to be able to look at, okay, where can I get this talent from? How do I get it on board quickly? How do I retain it? And then also, how do I manage the increasing cost for talent? And also looking at new locations can help balance that. So there's a number of factors that I think that buyers are looking for when they're looking to work with a service provider. And then on our next slide, we talk a little bit more detail about, okay, so what are we looking for and what outcomes are we trying to achieve? And the real focus is that actually enterprises are trying to get that outside expertise to help them things in terms of how do you grow your market share? How do you deliver a better customer experience? How do you get your preferred market positioning while working with a service provider? But also, how do you blend these new delivery models? So whether it's a virtual hybrid workforce, how do you manage the talent you've got? We know that managing a remote or hybrid workforce is harder than when managing a workforce when everyone's in a contact center. And then also, what solutions are most effective? So how do you adopt new solutions quickly, but also maintaining security and regulatory compliance? And then also, how do you prepare to be a market disruptor and also really embrace these digital technologies moving forward? And Chandak, on this slide here, I think that we talk a lot about within Everest Group and a lot of our research, we talk a lot about digital CXM. But what do we mean by digital CXM? Can you help explain what we mean by it and also how are we seeing it grow?
Absolutely, David. So at Everest Group, we consider digital CXM as a blend of both technologies and human-related services. It's not just about getting onboarded in a platform and start chatting to your customer. It's about tying together all the pieces of digital CXM, such as automation, analytics, chatbots, conversational AIs, putting together the aspects of consulting, design thinking, to think what are the customer touch points and how those can be, how those customer touch points can be made better for the customers, and so that they can have a smoother journey throughout the organization, and then blending them together giving the agents the required technologies and tools, and also as an organization, having those set of technologies in place so that the entire customer journey is smooth and planned, and the customers do not get a lot of hiccups throughout the journey. In Average Group, we have been tracking this digital CXM market from last few years, and what we saw is the digital CXM market has been the powerhouse of this industry. If we see in the previous slide, the market of digital CXM has been growing 3 times faster than the traditional CXM market, which is plain agent-based CXM services. The growth has been 36 to 38%, which is phenomenal. And we also track the market prevalence of different digital solutions, and what has the growth number of the clients have been. We saw analytics, automation, CX consulting leading the front, both in terms of market prevalence as well as the growth in clients. For CX consulting, design thinking, we see a lot of new first-time outsourcers coming up, partnering with providers just to understand what are the areas in which they are lagging and how those can be improved. Analytics, automation, although they have been in the market from a long time, but now they are more strategically used, not just a point solution, but across the organization. And also to harness any insight that the customer data then can give. AI-infused chatbots, conversational AI is the other front where we see a lot of movement happening, where it's not just about plain rule-based chatbots anymore, but to understand the intent behind a customer conversation, and so that the chatbot can blend itself and it can be flexible enough to understand based on a conversation and a customer sentiment. On the next slide, if we see the other point around talent shortages and the rising cost, while onshore locations like US or Western Europe, they have performed better than the other offshore or nearshore locations, but these headwinds have compelled different leaders to take a call towards nearshore or offshore locations. So if we see on the right hand side, Asia Pacific, it has close to 40% of CXM FTEs right now. And the growth has been 10 to 12%, which is much higher than the other 2 regions like EMEA and Americas. Asia Pacific, in Asia Pacific, particular countries like Malaysia, India, Philippines, they have seen a strong growth in number of FTEs and setup of delivery locations. Talking about EMEA and Americas, a lot of growth have been driven by nearshore locations. For example, in EMEA, Poland, Czech Republic, Romania, Ireland, these are the locations who are driving the growth. Similarly, for US nearshore markets like Mexico, Colombia, El Salvador, which have been smaller, but have been seeing a good growth in the recent years. So I think these are the factors which are compelling leaders to move their delivery locations to these nearshore and offshore markets versus an onshore heavy delivery model.
Brilliant. Thanks, Chandak. And I think as we move on, one of the things that we wanted to also do is to share some of the challenges that we know that CX leaders are facing right now. So we get to talk to a lot of CX leaders. So people who are heading up customer experience, customer service functions, delivery managers, delivery leaders, and really wanted to understand, okay, what are the challenges that you're facing right now and looking into 2023? And when we see there's 6 sort of main challenges that we see, and we combine a couple of them together. But the first one is around securing customer data, which has always been a challenge for people in the CX function. And actually, that's almost table stakes now. And well, it is table stakes now. And you're not in business if you can't secure your customers' data. But what we're seeing is a real focus now on, well, how do you use that data to improve the customer experience? So you're capturing all this data, but how are you using it to identify reasons for contact and then eliminating those? Or how can you preempt what the customer's calling for and be proactive in that messaging? Or how can you identify areas that you shouldn't have a call because it's a broken process? How can you use analytics from a voice or a chat perspective in terms of understanding what's happening in the call and managing quality of agents, etc.? So we know there's a big focus in terms of how you can use the data you're capturing to improve the CX. We also know there's a real challenge around the talent crisis and improving the employee experience. And so how are you going to do that in terms of getting the talent you need, both your internal talent and your external talent, but then also how you're improving that employee experience to retain the talent you need? Because we all know, if we've worked in CX for a long time, that constantly churning agents means that there's going to be a negative impact on the customer experience. Third, we actually know there's a big focus around optimizing delivery models, locations and site strategies, and mitigating risks. So looking at, well, where should we be? How do we balance the risk of having a lot of business in one location compared to another? Are we in the right location and sites to get the talent we're going to need moving forward? But also, how do we mitigate the risks that may be within our business? So we know that's a really important factor as well. The fourth is around increasing value delivered and reducing the cost of support. So support has always been seen, and customer experience was always seen almost as a cost of doing business. But it's actually now being seen much more as it's something that's delivering value to the business. But no one's got a blank check, and you're not going to be able to keep spending, even though the business really accepts that CX is really vital now. So it's how do you increase the value, whether it's through retention of customers, whether it's through the ability to sell, cross-sell, upsell, but also how do you reduce the cost of support? So whether that's through cost arbitrage, whether it's through volume reduction, how do you do that combined? So that's a real focus area. Fifth is around modernizing the CX infrastructure. So we know no matter where you're starting from in terms of your technology, there is always improvements that you can make, or customers are going to be expecting different levels of service, different access to technologies through different digital channels. And so how do you modernize the infrastructure you got? And that's even harder if you're working with a lot of legacy systems, like a lot of the banks or insurers maybe are working with. So how do you modernize your infrastructure? And then last is around how do you anticipate the future customer, industry and technology trends? Because there's so much going on in the market, so much noise in the market about what customers want. And we know that CX leaders are challenged with how do I understand what's happening? But more importantly, what's the impact of what's happening on the outside going to have on my business and my customers? So we're recommending on the next slide, we've talked about 5 areas where we would be saying to CX leaders they should be focusing on, just to make sure that they're able to get ahead of the game and start to address some of the challenges that they may be seeing. The first one is around embracing digital CX. So we've talked a lot about the growth of digital CX and what that means, but we'll go into more detail on that. Secondly, we would talk about review your delivery models, your service providers and your locations to make sure you're in the right places with the right providers who can give you the service that you need, not only today, but moving forward. Third is around accelerate your automation efforts, because we know that's really going to be important as customers are starting to expect it, but also that's going to help you control your costs by being able to automate more of the traffic that may be going to a human, and that enables you to have that cost lever under control. Talent management strategies would be the fourth recommendation that we would make in terms of really focusing on how you're managing the talent that you've got. And if you're outsourced, working with your providers on their talent management strategies as well, because keeping and retaining the best talent is going to be vital. And then last, we know that there's a lot of questions around things such as the particularly future economic conditions, possible recessions. We know that inflation is high in many countries, and I'm based in the UK, and our political system has been all over the place in the last couple of weeks, and the pound's been down. So we know there's a lot of volatility in the market. So how do you prepare for price increase demands? And we're saying, look at external sources of price benchmarking data to really understand where you stand. So we're going to go into a little bit more detail on each of these. So the first one would be to recommend to CX leaders to embrace your digital CXM to serve your customers where, when, and how they want. And Jandak, I think you're going to take us through in a little bit more detail about what that actually means.
Yes, absolutely. So talking about the CXM market, while it has been primarily driven by cost arbitrage, focusing on labor arbitrage, containing costs through improving operations, finding out what are the areas which requires more spending and if it can be reduced, and using point solution wherever required. I think the industry has been moving from that kind of model, and it's right now a digitally infused model where an holistic picture of customer experience is important for most of the CX buyers. A seamless interaction across whatever touch point the customers are connecting with, infusing digital tools and technologies, giving the agents and the customers at both the fronts the required tools and solutions which can quickly solve their problems or help them answering to the queries that are posed by the customers. So we'll look at both these two fronts in the next slides, where how digitally infused business models are helping to improve the overall customer experience and also keeping the agents happy, because a happy agent leads to a happy customer. So looking on the customer experience side, I think the omni-channel platforms are helping a lot and providing a faster and quicker resolutions across different channels. Analytics are being leveraged by the buyers as well as service providers in the market to personalize the customer experience based on the customer persona and the past data of those customers. It is also helping them to understand these customers better, understand their needs, and preempt any potential challenges that can come in front of them in the future. Also, the self-service solutions that are being implemented by different companies are enabling them to solve a lot of queries without the customers getting to their agents, and thus helping a lot in terms of cost containment. I think on the other side, agents are being more informed. Agents do not get repetitive queries. Those are being eliminated by the digital CXM solutions. Their interfaces are getting quicker. They don't have to switch between n number of windows right now to get the required answer. They can quickly get it through their agent as a solutions and in a single platform. The advanced analytics part is also helping them in better profiling which agent would be right fit for a particular customer, and also it's helping the brands to monitor how the agents are performing on an overall level. We recently did a survey, and we believe that the journey towards the desired outcome of a digital CXM solution is not very easy, and it needs to be realistic from a customer side, and the required time frame should be set in such a way that digital CXM solutions can bring in the required outcomes. I think the most crucial part of starting a digital CXM journey is identifying which are the solutions which will be best fit for a particular business case or a particular problem that a company is facing. So what we have seen is that most organizations rely on their internal teams to identify automation and analytics use cases. And these are the solutions which are quite mature in the market. They have established use cases, and based on the demand patterns, business units which are adopting these, the customer demand as well as the use cases which needs to be implemented, these are relatively simpler for organization to identify with the help of their internal teams. While on the other hand, and it is contrasting in nature, that conversational AI and cloud-based contact centers are those which are not very mature in the market. These are relatively lesser implemented by organizations, and most of the organizations are relying on their third-party service providers as well as CX consultants to identify these solutions and then later on implement it to their particular use case.
Brilliant.
So David, would you take us through the delivery models and then the service providers and locations?
Yeah, thanks, Chandak. Yeah, so I mean, the second recommendation we've got is around reviewing your delivery models, your service providers, etc. And I think that stands on its own, really. And if we look at the next slide, one of the things that we're talking about is that your next generation operating model in contact centers is going to have to deliver 4 basic principles as we see it. So better quality agents is obvious, but it's really important to say, because as we do automate or eliminate the simplest contacts, agents are going to have to improve the levels of skills they got in terms of things like troubleshooting, empathy, all those things that you're going to expect from an agent who actually isn't dealing with a very simple interaction, but actually something's a bit more complicated. So you're going to need to find better quality agents, for just forcing people to think about where are the best locations for their business. Technology-driven delivery, we've talked a lot about digital CXM, but really focusing on the delivery to, even when a human is in front of that interaction, there's going to be agent assistance technology there. There's going to be automation in the background. So all these technologies can come to really help an agent as well as to support an agent, and then sometimes to replace an agent. So I think it's about combining humans with technology, which I know a lot of our service providers talk a lot about as well, to actually bring the best experience. So it's not one or the other, but it's actually designing an experience which maximizes the effectiveness of both parts. That consistent omni-channel delivery, I think we've talked a lot about that, but people have talked about omni-channel for many, many years, but it's not really come to fruition everywhere. So I think that's going to be important. And then thinking about CX consulting and advisory support as not as something you get separately, but using that to help you identify, well, what is the best experience for your customer? How do you identify the contacts that you should be automating or eliminating versus handling? And then really improving that experience using technology in the right place, but not just for the sake of it. So those services can come to the fore. And one of the other things that we talk about in terms of the talent shortage, which comes around to reviewing your operating model. And I'm not going to go through every part of this slide, you'll be pleased to know. But basically what we're seeing is there is an attrition issue across the globe in many of the sort of the main delivery locations. And so it's important to be thinking about, well, where is the right talent I'm going to get? Because if everyone's struggling for talent, I'm going to have to be paying a lot more for the talent I need. Can I find the right location for that talent? And I think that what we're seeing is that you have to start thinking about your talent model in a mix. So it's not just a one size fits all model, but starting to think about to get your decisions based on things such as your resilience that you need, the regulatory compliance and the complexities you may have, the technology, the sourcing maturity that you have, starting to think about, okay, how much of it is going to be offshore, near shore? How much is it going to be with onshore or near shore? What about in terms of other operating models as well? So starting to think about, okay, how many are going to be permanent workers? How many am I going to contract through an outsourcer? How many are going to be contingent workers? How do I leverage gig in that as well? And then the new term, if you like, which is our digital workers. So they're not humans, but they're people like the chatbots, etc., that are going to take some of that volume. But what we're seeing is, and a lot of the enterprise buyers we're talking to are starting to look at their operating model as a complete picture and then mapping into it. These type of interactions could be done by gig. These type of interactions would be done by a human onshore. These ones could be a digital worker, and start getting into real granular detail in terms of how that operating model would shape up. So our recommendation would be to be looking at your operating model, thinking about how that shapes up in the future, looking at all the different levers that you've got to pull. And then I think if we think about the third challenge, I think, Chandak, you're going to take us through this one in terms of automation and how we should be leveraging automation.
Yeah, so automation, I think is very fundamental in creating a smoother experience for customers, and it's very vital in reducing the need of human agents and the ability to cater to the customer queries by automating them. We see it on two perspectives. One is how it can improve customer experience. The other one is what are the impact that it would have on the operational side. So if we see on the customer facing as well as agent assess solutions which have direct impact on customer experience, we see a lot of self-service, IVRs, smart IVRs, intelligent virtual agents, unifying agent desktops, RPAs deploying attended and both unattended RPAs, automating the post-call work as the agents complete their call, and what would be the next best action for an agent while they're chatting or conversing with the customers. On the operational side, we see a lot of workflow automation being undertaken, forecasting, scheduling, sending out regular emails or raising invoices. And among the other things, recruitment is one where you see a lot of automation coming in, assessing the profile for candidates who would be the right fit for a particular brand, and also taking them through, also infusing digital CXM solutions in their assessment, where a live human recruiter is not always interacting with the potential candidates, but a chatbot or an automated platform is interacting with the candidate. We also see a lot of metaverse coming in, where brands are creating virtual rooms where candidates can interact with the employees as well as each other while they are undertaking the interview process for a particular company. We see a lot of benefits that are being driven by the customer experience side of automation. So customer facing tools are reducing the customer effort, making it simpler for them to get their queries answered. Those are highly secured as agents don't get access to the data, and also help in delivering a consistent experience on any channel that the customers are connecting with. On the other side, agent assist solutions, whenever a customer is connecting with an agent, these automations are helping them to reducing the handling time, helping them to answer the questions quickly without any significant errors in place. It's also improving the efficiency, and the customers issues are better visible to the agents, and they can now see the broader picture behind the customer interacting maybe previously with a different agent or previously with a chatbot, and can pick up the conversation from where it has been left by any other channel, chatbot or an agent. Intelligent virtual agents is particularly very interesting use case, and we see the life of or the path of intelligent virtual agents has been moving away from basic automation to now managing more complex tasks. So if we see on the left hand side of the graph, and we have plotted the advancement in the automation technologies as well as the impact on customer experience that it has seen. So the more matured rule-based chatbots, I think those have been widely implemented and are well equipped to take the low complexity, to answer the low complexity queries, support the employees based on certain set of rules. These have been very mature, although the impact has been low, and their complexity, and they are not so advanced like the more complex AI infused ones. If we move ahead on the right hand side, while the maturity decreases, but the impact increases if we keep on adding some bit of intelligence, using maybe understanding the context behind the conversation, understanding simple natural languages, may not be long paragraphs, but can be single lines, integrating them with the backend processes, and enabling them to get input from multiple channels and not just a web-based chat or a simple text. If we further move ahead, I see the solution being less mature relatively to rule-based chatbots, but the infusement of AI and ML and intelligence solutions have been greater. And these have been these intelligent virtual agents have been really good in understanding long paragraphs, understanding sentiment behind a particular conversation, what a customer is trying to say, maybe picking the right spot to transfer it to an agent if a customer is not very happy with the resolution. So these are the virtual chatbots which have been good at doing it, although the maturity is relatively lower, but wherever they have been implemented, the experience have been really good and the impact have been good at customer experience.
Yeah, and I think, Chandra, I mean, it's a good point. And I think that what we're seeing is that, I mean, there's so much focus around the digital CXM, as we've touched on. We're expecting that area is going to continue fairly rapidly in terms of advancement. We're seeing technologies advancing all the time. You even start looking at things like translation technologies that are out there as well to be able to support multilingual and sort of to really help that, where you've got some hard to service languages. So I think it's an exciting area where we're seeing the IVAs develop and actually becoming a key part of a delivery system. And so if we move on to the fourth challenge, which you've got there, is around talent management. So we've talked about technology as potentially a way of supporting talent, but actually you just need talent. I mean, all businesses that are people driven are going to need talent. And so what we're seeing is that actually organizations need to embed digital CXM into their talent management lifecycle. So starting with agent sourcing, but also hiring new agents. We know a lot of agents drop out of the process because it takes too long, or they get a better job because there's a 6-8 week lag in terms of making someone offer or getting them on board. So actually we've seen the best organizations actually really leveraging digital CXM or digital technologies such as analytics, etc., and chatbots and IVAs to really be able to help on that side. Then on the onboarding, so we all know, if you've worked in contact centers or around contact centers, the onboarding process can be tough and you lose a lot of people in the onboarding. And then through training and upskilling is also an area where there's a lot of dropout in the process. So if you're working really hard to find your talent, it's important that you're actually working really hard to keep that talent as well. And then lastly, agent engagement. So we've always known that in a contact center, keeping an agent engaged is going to be crucial. In a hybrid model or remote model, as many people are in now, you have to work even harder and have to think about, obviously we've seen gamification's been around a long time, but we've seen a lot more interest in gamification. There's thinking about how do you use technology in terms of trying to to bring that agent engagement to the place where it would be if they were, as they used to be, in an office or close to you. And what we've seen is actually, so there's been a real improvement in the sort of the talent management parameters that we got there on the left-hand side when they've adopted digital CXM. And so we've seen an improvement of agent retention of between 11 and 20%, productivity of 41 to 60%, which I think everyone in the contact center world would love to see. And then the agent experience of 21 to 40%, which is going to really engage or retain the agents that you've got as well. So what we've seen is that when organizations have embraced talent management and digital CXM as part of talent management, there have been tangible business benefits of doing it. So it's not just a nice to have, but there are tangible business benefits to do it. And on the right-hand side, you can see those organizations that have 20% more improvement in their talent management parameters. 100% of them are engaging with their agents through digital CXM. 88 are using it for training and upskilling of agents. So there are real tangible benefits, as I said, of being able to use digital CXM as part of your hiring process. And Chandak, maybe you can give us a little bit more detail about some of the specifics in terms of what people are using.
Yeah, I think it's important to understand where the implementation and where and when the implementation of digital CXM solutions is required. And at Everest Group, we break it into two parts: pre-recruitment and post-recruitment. And I think we have been seeing a lot of investment in both these fronts. So pre-recruitment is about targeting the right agent, marketing your jobs at the right places, using your digital marketing techniques, using the data that you have from your past hiring of agents to focus on those segment of agents which have been doing well in your organization. I think, and then when the correct set of agents have been identified and a good pipeline has been built, focusing the hiring and giving them maybe chatbots or solutions through which they can, without interacting with a human agent or a recruiter, they can get their queries answered, be more clear about what they have been, what they should look forward to, and then interviewing them through digital channels and not through a live recruiter. After hiring an agent, I think learning and development plays a good part, and it's very important for organizations to keep their agents equipped with most up-to-date information about the brands that they are serving. I think gamification or AR, VR based learning mechanisms have been, while the maturity is not that great right now, but these have been seen, these solutions have seen investments in the recent past. On the other hand, giving them micro learning, smaller modules to learn from, depending on what are the areas of improvement for them, giving them trainer bots to understand and practice customer facing scenarios without an actual customer, and also at the same time getting in feedback from the bot have been turned out to be really good for most organizations. I think digital CXM needs to be looked at from pre-onboarding or pre-hiring and then post-hiring, and what are the gaps that organization can fill with these solutions in place. The other thing, David, I think is about, while we talk a lot about digital CXM and operating models and different locations, I think organizations should expect some price increases due to the pressures on service providers and the inflation, and they should benchmark it with external data. And I think you'd be best place to take us to the next few slides.
Yeah, thanks, Chandak. Yeah, and I mean, I think you're right. I mean, we can talk a lot about the future and the use of chatbots and AI and technology and the metaverse and all these things that are really good to talk about and we should be thinking about. But at the end of the day, there is still a commercial aspect to a lot of these relationships. If you're working with an outsourced provider, they expect to be paid. And I'm coming from a sourcing background. You have to accept that you're going to have to pay your service providers. And one of the things that we know is that service providers are facing tough times in terms of high inflationary pressures in many countries that they're delivering from, shortage of talent. So we're actually seeing, and this was a survey we did last year, or beginning of this year, I think, in terms of how many of the respondents were saying they are being asked by their service providers for a rate increase. And it was 73% in the contact center space. Interestingly, in the IT apps dev space, it was 90%, but CXM and contact center was second highest with 73%. And on average, the percentage increase was 7.2%. So that's going to have a major impact on people's budgets. And one of the things that I've always counseled people that I've worked with is to really understand, well, how does your price compare? Because having, say, been in sourcing and procurement for a long time, one of the things that we can see is that you can negotiate hard and you can get a price. But if you've already been paying much higher than market rate, you might be able to negotiate a lower rate with your service provider or hold it flat. But if you don't know that you've actually been paying 10, 15, 20% higher than some of your competitors in the market, you may be thinking you're winning and you're actually losing. On the flip side, if you're already paying really low prices because you've worked hard and you negotiated hard and you've had attractive deals over the last few years, actually you may have to accept there is going to have to be a rate increase if you're going to have to get the talent and the dedication and the support that you need from a service provider who at the end of the day has to make some money and might make a margin on the business. So what we've seen quite often actually is something that really works well for our customers is to actually do price benchmarking. And this is just a case study. And this session is not meant as an advert for the price benchmarking work that we do here at Everest Group, although we do a great job of it. But it's really to show the value that this client got by actually looking outside and saying, right, how does our pricing compare to the industry? And they wanted to look at over 800 roles / locations / language and channels. So a very complicated business. They wanted to understand, how does this compare to what others are paying in the market? And we were able to help them with that. And we were able to identify between 11 and 12% of cost savings potential. And we know that they've gone after quite a lot of those savings and have saved significantly large amounts of money based on the fact that they understood where they stood in the market. They knew where they were paying more. They knew where they were paying less. They were able to build negotiation strategies that were appropriate to the situation. And then ultimately they were able to negotiate with their providers to get the best deal for everybody. And because they were educated in the run up for the negotiation, they were able to enter that negotiation on a positive step. The service providers, though, also knew where they stood, and so therefore there was able to be a productive conversation. And we do know that the relationships weren't harmed by the negotiation. No service provider likes to not get the raise that they're looking for sometimes, but actually if you present facts and data, you can often have a very sensible discussion. And that's what we would be expecting mature organizations to be doing, is having a sensible conversation about what does the price need to be to get the talent that we need. So what we would just recommend is always take a chance, if you can, to be thinking about, well, wow, how does our pricing compare? Because you may think it's high, you may think it's low, but without data, you're going to be guessing. So that would be our recommendation in terms of getting some outside input. So just moving on now to the quick, we'd like to do a quick poll, and we'll get the audience, and this will be launched by somebody in a moment. But what we'd really like to understand from you right now is, we've covered some of the challenges that we know CX leaders are facing. What's the most significant challenge your CXM function is facing right now? So is it securing the data and improving it, using it? I went through all the 6. If you're not seeing any challenges, there isn't all of the above option, or none of the above. So none of the above if you've got no challenges whatsoever. If you've actually got all of these challenges, then feel free to put all of the above. But it'd just be good to understand from the audience that we've got here, what are the key challenges that you're facing right now? And then we'll share this back with the wider audience as well. So got some good participation, so thank you for that. Please keep it coming in if you can, in terms of responding. It's just really useful data for us just to see what people are facing on a day-to-day basis. So we'll give it another 30 seconds perhaps. So if you could, got really good participation. So over 60% of people now have participated. So if you feel that you can participate, that'd be really appreciated. We'll give it now 10 seconds more maybe, and then we'll close the poll and we'll take a quick look at the answer. So we get 5, 4. I don't need to do a countdown. You can all count back from 10, I'm sure. So I won't do a countdown. But yeah, if we could close the poll now, we can take a look at where the answers come. So brilliant. Thank you very much. So really the interesting results here for us. So actually there was quite a lot of focus there on increasing value delivered and reducing the cost of support. So 29% of the people that responded were saying that that's an area that is their biggest challenge. The next couple of challenge areas are actually quite close together. So anticipating future customer industry trends were at 16%, and then all of the above we're at 16% as well. So that's an interesting one. Only 4% or 2 people who responded are having none of those challenges. So they're either in a very fortunate position, or actually they've got other challenges that maybe we haven't covered here. And I'd love to hear from them what those challenges are, because we do want to make sure that in future our research coverage is covering the areas that people are challenged with. And then the last couple on the poll, so securing customer data was at 14% as well. And then down fairly low was around optimizing the delivery models and modernizing the CX infrastructure. And so be interesting to have a chat with some people after this, maybe in terms of, is that a challenge, but it's not just your number one challenge? And it feels like maybe the focus on cost is probably coming back to the fore now with everything we're hearing about the economic situation. So thank you for that. That was really interesting. And when we share the deck, we will include the answers to the poll just so you can see what people have been putting into that. So thank you very much. So the next section that we're going to go on to is just briefly touch on the role of service providers in this. So we know that actually service providers do play a key role in CX. We know some organizations, and you saw 2/3 of organizations who are delivering CX actually have an in-house operation, but we know service providers are delivering over half of that as well. And so we wanted to just cover that because it's an area we've covered for a long, long time here at Everest Group. And we find it a really interesting, fast moving ecosystem as well. So Chandak, maybe you can just give us a view as to what's going on in the service provider market.
So the service provider realm, I think, is very interesting to look at how this space has been growing and evolving in the last few years. So while there were existing strong competitors in the market who are strengthening their global capabilities, such as the likes of Concentrix, Teleperformance, and Untitled, which have global presence all around the world and have been increasing their presence across different locations, different languages. There have been powerful new competitors are also emerging, which had the IT DNA in them, and they're expanding into the contact center market like 24/7 AI, Accenture, IBM, Cognizant. I think these are the players who are bringing their previous experience of IT services to the contact center technology and infusing their technology capabilities, coupling it up with the agent-based services and targeting the buyers in the market. A strong influence is also seen from the third-party technology players across different spaces like automation, analytics, cloud contact centers, process mining, where a lot of partnerships are happening between these technology players with the IT DNA-based providers likes of on the right-hand side, and also with the more traditional, strong global competitors in the market. So in the next slide, we have tried to plot what are the service providers that we see across different regions, and we see a plethora of providers. While there are more global providers present across all the regions, like Majorel, Teleperformance, Comdata Group, Concentrix, Untitled, I think every one of them have presence across different continents. We also see smaller region-focused players. Also, some of them are work-at-home based, such as in North America, we see LiveOps, Arise. We also see smaller providers like GlowTouch. In Latin America, we see Algartech, CallLink. These are the providers who are concentrated or focused on these particular regions. We also see that in the Asia Pacific region as well, where Bell Systems, Relaya, Transcosmos, although they are very big in size, but still focus on the Asia Pacific region. So the competition is diverse. We both global providers, regional providers, as well as IT BPO based providers are fighting out to get the market share. And it's very interesting to see how these providers are playing multiple roles in helping the enterprises generate value through the engagement. So David, would you like to take us through the slide?
Yeah, and before we move on to this slide, I think it's worth pointing out that from my experience, I mean, we've put a few names of service providers on that chart previously, and now obviously that's a very small list from a very small selection from a very long list. I think for me, from a buyer perspective, it's always important to think about what are you looking for in a service provider. What capabilities am I looking for? How does the relationship, how does the culture align? Because we know that actually we do our CXM peak, as many of you will know if you're on this webinar, which we cover the Americas, we cover EMEA, we cover APAC. and we talk about who are aspirants, major contenders and leaders. And actually all of those providers are highly skilled at what they're delivering, but they have different skill sets in terms of size, geographies, delivery locations that they work from. So for me, I would always caution a buyer to say, think about what you're looking for, and then really use things such as the peak to understand, okay, which are the providers should you be thinking about, and then engaging with those providers to really understand what they're bringing to your business, which links to this really, which is, so what are they bringing to your business? And we see that service providers are bringing typically 6 things that we see are probably the most important. So they can drive your business outcomes. So for me, it's always been important to be very clear about what your business outcomes are. When you set an RFP, the business requirements have to be clear. What do you want to achieve? Because a service provider is never going to achieve something you don't ask them to deliver, or it's unlikely. So you really have to be clear about what your business outcomes are. They can deliver end-to-end offerings, so helping you to deliver an end-to-end seamless experience for your customer, whereas in an internal function that may be more difficult. I think digital adoption and transformation is one of the key movers and that we're seeing right now, as we touched on earlier, in terms of that digital adoption and transformation, and being able to leverage the skills that these service providers are able to bring. I think verticalization, so having a real depth understanding of a particular vertical that may have specific nuances, whether it's healthcare, whether it's banking, whether it's insurance, whether there's some specific skill sets that are needed. We know, and we touched on earlier, that providers have better talent management quite often than some in-house operations, because they have a well-oiled machine that's been doing that for many, many years, and that they've honed that over many years. And then the last one is speed to value. And we touched on that right at the beginning as well, which is, it's really important for enterprises right now to be able to, especially with, as we saw from the quick poll, a lot of focus around increasing the value, reducing cost. So the speed of that is going to help you to demonstrate more value that you're delivering, and also reduce your costs. So we do know that service providers are able to generate some of that speed to value because they've got the technology, they've got the talent already, and they're able to deliver it. So this was not meant as an advertisement for service providers. We know there are many high-class organizations that are delivering for themselves, but actually we're seeing that service providers are being leveraged more and more to be able to tap into some of these skill sets that they have. So just moving on, I'm conscious we've only got about 5 minutes, and I do want to get to some questions. What I wanted to do is I wanted to make sure that we could flag up to any of the enterprises on this call. So any of the buyers that we have, anyone who's in a CX role or customer service role, a complimentary offering to you, which is, if you're not familiar with Everest Group, you can click on the link in the chat and provide your details, and we'll provide you with a complimentary overview of a selected service provider. And there's a list of ones there, but actually, if you've got specific providers, we'd happily sort of know who they are and see if we can address that for you. So there is a link in the chat. Press on that link, and then we can provide you with that overview of a service provider analysis, so you can understand how they're doing against those dimensions that you can see on the right. So financial performance, industry presence, etc., etc. Unfortunately, if you're from a service provider on this call, we aren't going to be able to provide you with insights into your competitors, but also we're very happily talk to you if you do want to talk about what we're seeing in the CXM market, and my details or Chandak's details are at the end of this presentation. So very happy to, but this complimentary offering is aimed at enterprise buyers, so CX leaders, customer service leaders in enterprises. So having said that, we'd like to move on to Q&As. I know we've only got 5 minutes, and so maybe we can pick a couple of questions that we've got. And I think the first question we got, and it was the first one in from today, was, do we see any contraction? And we were talking about the CXM market at the time. Do we see any contraction due to the changing economic conditions, especially the recession in the US? I think my perspective, and Chandak, I'd love to get your view on this as well, but my perspective is we've often seen that CX has strengthened during a recession, and actually people do look to reduce their cost, as borne out by the poll, and are actually looking at service providers to potentially pick up some of the services that they've offered. So we do see there's an impact during the recession on some of the sort of businesses in these areas. So whether they're in luxury goods, whether they're in travel and hospitality, they may be impacted. But from a CXM perspective, we often see that those type of organizations are then really focused on reducing cost and look to outsourcing as being a way of trying to reduce the cost. There are other areas such as sort of financial services, utilities, that actually tend to stay fairly consistent even for a recession. And so we wouldn't expect that. So from an overall CXM perspective, I think we'll still see a very strong CXM market, although there will be challenges, and the focus from enterprises may shift from digital transformation to reduction of cost. But I think there's still a good place to be if you're in the CXM market. But Chandak, I don't know if you've got a view on that as well.
I think, David, the CXM providers have been really doing well in reducing cost and at the same time bringing in digital CXM components in the overall service delivery. So, and they have a good track record in doing that, be it COVID or the past recessions that have happened. So I think we don't see a contraction in the market, while the focus may shift, like you said, from an overall end-to-end digital transformation, high value projects to a more cost efficient service delivery. But in the market won't contract in any way, and the providers will go on to do the job that they have been doing in the past.
Brilliant. Thanks, Chandak. Probably got time for one, maybe two questions, depending on how quick we are. There was a question from Maddie that asked around how are organizations with legacy data sources managing so many in the BFSI sector have data that's in silos or hard to get it all together to get the right CX. And I think that you're right. And I think that what we see is that there's a lot of focus from those type of organizations that have got legacy systems that they're looking to work with providers who can then come with solutions around how do you aggregate that data into a particular type of a data lake or something. And then that's getting into an area of technology that I'm not super expert on, but starting to bring that data into a place where you can then access it from a CX perspective. So I think it is a real big challenge for organizations who've got legacy data silos. It's hard to get to one view of the customer, is almost impossible in that scenario. And I think what they're doing is they're looking for providers who can help them piece it together. But there is also an acceptance at times that actually you're not going to get that one view of the customer, and you have to make do with what you've got and designing the journeys accordingly to what you've got access to, because you can't just suddenly remagic or redo the whole infrastructure that you've been based your business on for 20 or 30 years. So actually there's a sticky plaster, if you like, the analogy of putting a sticking plaster on it sometimes to make it work, but over time looking to how a technology solution could answer it. So we don't have a great answer on that, but I think that I think we're just seeing that organizations are looking to do what they can to address it. I don't know, Chandak, in the last 30 seconds, if you've got anything to add to that.
I think for the legacy organization is more important to pick up the right battle, identify one solution at a time, and then go through the transformation journey. I think it's not about them doing an overall end-to-end digital transformation and transform their organization on an overall level. It's about identifying the right business unit, right problems to solve, and then build on to it based on the outcomes that they have got previously with the pilots or the overall projects that they have run. So Brilliant. It's important for them to choose their battle before going and a full-blown transformation project.
That's great. Thank you. So we've reached the end of time. So I'd really like to thank everyone who attended today. There will be the necessary follow-ups as always. There's lots of information that we produce, that please check that out. You will receive a copy of this after the session as well. But I'd like to thank you for your time today.
Yeah, thanks everyone.